I think the I think the first thing that I'd like to just say is wow. Let's thank all the panelists for this amazing day that they have given us. And then I have a question for you. How do your heads and hearts feel? It's been a day of filling them, I think, in lots of different ways. I know it's been a lot to digest, so I'm not going to try and do anything that makes this neat and tidy, because frankly, art, life, and history are never either. It's impossible. So rather, what I thought I'd do is just pull out a few thoughts from each panel that seem to pull across all of the panels and connected to the umbrella that has framed the day that Anne set out this morning, which is the role of the artist to reflect and shape contemporary issues. And as somebody who has worked a lot with historical art, I think every day about how all art is contemporary. When Thomas Cole or George Caleb Bingham were painting their work was contemporary. It is we and in the generations that came after each artist's generation that has made them historical. So wow, we've heard a variety of ways to think about connections and interconnectedness across stories, materials, experiences, and perhaps most importantly, the contradictions that they create. We've heard about how the use of the familiar helps us make sense, but it also complicates things. The importance of knowing history, our own and that of others. And we've heard a lot about different kinds of ecosystems, what they have been, what they are, and maybe we'll walk out of the room thinking about what they might be. When Nari and Lauren kicked off this morning, we heard about the importance of context, who is making and who is viewing, the relationship of the individual to the whole, and particularly with we the people, which we are so thrilled to have on view in our galleries, how mundane materials tackle important and challenging topics, and also how to make things more knowable by making them harder to view. And then we moved to the environment, where we heard about that impulse to categorize. And it was so interesting to me in the final session, and even actually all the sessions, but particularly finally, about how categorization has influenced everything in thinking about memory and memorials and history. In thinking about the environment, there was talk about evolution, extinction, celebration, and critique. And there was a weave throughout the day of these centuries-long issues and conversations. The translation of ideas and materials to connect the past and the present, to illuminate and to unpack contradictions of knowledge and experience. There was also, talking in the environmental section, that idea of the nature as a collaborator in the work. And I think Pam stated that beautifully, and it's particularly apt in her work, but others did too, again, about those complicated relationships. And then that idea of human-wrought change. Isn't that what all our artists have been doing, past and present? I think our artists that are with us today, especially, we can thank for that. So there was discussion, too, of the ways of taking issues and through art making platforms for investigation. As we moved to conversations around identity, other things came to the surface that I think we heard across the day. And you know what? There we go. Sorry, I was so caught up in the day. So here's just a reminder of some things from the first session. and that we move to conversations about identity, thinking about pushing out and against that master narrative and what is considered normative. There was also the conversations around assimilation, artistic and cultural, and forced acculturation, and forced forgetting, and tying into what we heard about memory and its function and monuments. Then also the thinking about erasures and how that brings again visibility and invisibility and the way that they play through cycles of history and time and art. And also today in contemporary work, shifting away from binaries, not just this and that, but rather the impact of complex webs of exchanges and how they tie to globalization. And we heard often across, I think, each of the sessions about the impact of economies. The art of resistance and embrace, and the use of the popular and the traditional, and how those references interweave. Heard conversations about gender and ethnicity, things that are concealed and things that are exposed. And of course, thinking about how all these things can be bridged. And finally, in the session on monuments and memory, how history itself normalizes our ideas about self and the national. What do we choose to remember, and how do we use history and memories? There's been the tying together of stories of today with those of the past, and using form and content, both from the ancient past and for things that are only present in our minds today, to create a sense of relevance. It's been a long day. And again, investigations of gender, past and present, and addressing history through either veiled references or great clarity. That idea of making monuments to forget, and the labor of art, which all of our artists here today are deeply engaged in, and sometimes with text. So I think I'll just close in saying that I think we have our artists to thank for guiding our ways, all of our ways, through the many paths and in our own times. Art does that something that singular things, data, documents, materials, can't do alone. Art makes accessible the inaccessible. It welcomes us, all of us, with whatever we bring to our encounters with art, to look, think, and feel. So thanks for joining us today in this day of looking, thinking, and feeling, and I hope that you'll join us soon and often to do it some more. Thanks so much for joining us today.